So we're right at 10 o'clock. Happy Wednesday. As a lot of you know, as you've joined these presentations, Smart Health did make a change with the KuConnects where you can get points. So the last slide that you'll see today will give you the instructions for how to do that. The presentation today, though, is going to be on how to move proposals for change forward. So after the last few weeks, I've talked about different single point ideas of looking at process improvement and things of that nature in a department. And so today we're going to talk about, okay, you've identified some of the proposals of things that need to move forward. How do you determine what to move forward first and how to prioritize? So I'll introduce myself. I'm Laura Hamilton. I am the Area HR Administrator for the Spokane Health Sciences Campus. And this is some of the work that I really love doing, is talking about that change management process within departments, so we don't get stuck in some of those spaces of doing things the way we've always done them because we get comfortable with them. I think as we look at ways to advance the work we're doing together as a team, we are able to meet exceptional expectations of our stakeholders. So there are different levels of initiative as people are looking at making changes and making decisions on proposals. Some people at level 1 are going to wait until they're asked to do something and then they'll initiate. Level 2, they're going to ask a lot of questions. So they may not necessarily wait until they're asked, but they're going to ask a lot of questions of different colleagues and managers about processes instead of making recommendations. The third one is going to be people who do make recommendations, then they act upon those process changes with the approval of their supervisor. People who live in area 4 are going to act and they're going to report immediately to their supervisor. And then individuals in 5 are going to act and they're going to report routinely. So they're not going to have that immediate reporting, but they are going to routinely update and follow up with management on what they're doing. So what we have to do is determine what is the appropriate level of initiative for the task that's been assigned. And we have to think about this as it relates to projects and processes as well. So in an organization, when we have people who are skilled and who are experienced in the function that they're doing, and they're sitting at level 1 or level 2, there's not going to be a lot of changes happening in the organization that the individuals were probably hired to institute. If you're in an organization and people who are unskilled and inexperienced are functioning at a level 4 and a level 5, there's probably a lot of that firefighting mentality going on in trying to fix some of the things that are happening that maybe haven't been as well thought through as they could have been. But if you have an organization when people are able to function at level 3, level 4, level 5, but then their supervisor, they're able to do that, but their supervisor only allows them to function at a level 1 or a level 2, those are going to be some of the dynamics when you have people struggling with feeling like they're being micromanaged in the work that they're doing. So it's actually pretty important as a manager of people or as an employee who's being managed to really determine with your supervisor or with your employees what the appropriate level of initiative is based on skill. And sometimes it's important project by project or process by process that that level of initiative be defined for each project and process as you're working through a comfort level on that initiative with the people you work alongside. So as we have a list, we've gone through brainstorm, we've gone through processes to really come up with a list of things that we would like to initiate some change on. How do we make decisions on which of those to move forward? And I like using the decision matrix, and it's something that's very commonly used in the business world, but it really talks about the level of control that we have over certain processes. Do we have low control over something? Because there are regulatory issues that come into play and we may not be able to influence as much as we would like to, or do we have high control over something? And then thinking about the positive or negative impact on stakeholders. Hopefully we're not moving things forward that have a negative impact on stakeholders, but if there's a low positive impact, we might address it differently than if there's a really high positive impact. And so as we're thinking about that decision matrix, if something has a low area of control that really our idea has a low positive impact, low area of control, it's probably something that we shouldn't be moving forward. A lot of times these, again, are things where there may be legislation or certain regulations that may keep us from moving some of that forward. And so it's okay to set those aside, even though there are ideas that have been brainstormed as a team that fall into that area. And then you have the high control, but low positive impact. If you have high control, you're going to have some positive impact, but it's not going to be significant. Really, you could, unless it's something really easy to do, and so you could do it fairly quickly without a huge impact on the team, you really probably could delay it. Or you may even need to think about, do you need to involve others who have more control over the process that need to be included in the conversation? So that's something to consider. Then we have those that are going to be high impact, high positive. Those are going to be your do it areas. If you're able to have a high impact, you have the decision-making authority. That level of initiative has been defined that, yes, you have the control to be able to do those things, and you don't need to loop in other people, then it would be something definitely to move ahead with and to get that those changes made. But to make sure that as you're doing that, you're communicating with the people who might be involved in a part of the process or impacted by the change, so that they're aware of it and not caught off guard, because that's always uncomfortable. Then we have the area that we're going to talk about today, and that's going to be, you have low control over an area, but it has a really high impact. And so you've taken all of your different ideas from brainstorming on process improvement, you've mapped them out on this matrix. And actually the way I like to map things out on the matrix is you take your brainstorming list and you assign every idea on the list a number. And as you meet as a team, you can actually take the, I love those 3M big Post-it note boards, the easels that you can use as a team so that everybody can see everything. So you take those and you number each of them and you actually put them into this matrix that you've drawn on that pad of paper. And so it, even as you have things that fall into the propose it, you're going to have things that are going to be maybe closer to the middle line and maybe middle control and not low control. And so those are things that you'll consider as far as who you need to loop in and how many people you need to loop in. So you're going to have in that square different areas where different brainstormed ideas are going to fall. But if you do have that high positive impact, you have low control to make the decision independently, that's where you'll need to put a proposal forward. So as you are moving from the brainstorm to the proposal, this is the form that I like to use that I'm comfortable with, where you define what the barrier, the problem, or the concern is. You've gone through the process with the team or individually if it's something that is within the scope of your position, where you've brainstormed some of those solutions. Then again, you've got those numbered items, so you're able to put the brainstorm solutions into the matrix. And that's where you're going to look at the area of what are the propose it, and you're going to define what the proposal is. So hopefully you've done that lateral brainstorm as well. We talked about a little bit last week that as you brainstorm solutions, it's always a good idea to put those solutions into categories. Then the team can brainstorm what categories did you expect to see as a part of the brainstorming process that you did not. identify what those are, and then brainstorm some potential additional solutions that didn't come out of that first brainstorming session. And that's how sometimes we can get out of the ruts that we get into, is by thinking about it a little bit differently as we're brainstorming. So as you do have the top proposed solutions for brainstorming, you map those onto the matrix and then decide which proposals to move forward. So when you are utilizing the proposal, it's important to make sure that you are taking, again, that appropriate level of initiative, and that's been defined ahead of time. Proposals don't have to be formal. I think a lot of times people might get stuck in this space of they need to write this 6-page paper on a proposal, but really proposals can be formal or informal. They can be done verbally. So it could be during a one-on-one meeting with the supervisor. You indicate, hey, I want to talk to you about an idea that I had. Here's the process that I went through. Here's ideas that I came up with, and share some of that process with them. Alternatively, if it is something that's going to have a high impact to a lot of stakeholders, it may be beneficial to go ahead and write up a formal proposal that really shows the pros and cons of different considerations that have been made. But they don't need to be long type documents in all cases. I really would think about what the appropriate format would be for whatever the issue is that's come up. As you are putting the meat of the proposal together, even if you are going to make the proposal verbally, make sure that your proposal serves all of your stakeholders, that you've identified different stakeholders who would be impacted by the change, and have really done the due diligence to make sure that you've received the right amount of input and that you're not going to have some resulting negative impacts that you haven't thought through. Think about what factual data through your process you've included in the proposal and in the process of getting a proposal pulled together. What facts and data and information can you point to for what the impact of this change would be that would have a positive impact on the organization? Have you communicated with those who would be impacted by the change to make sure that they've somehow been included in the proposal process, or at least you're aware that you're considering making a change to processes that exist? And does it consider those long-term consequences? Sometimes, as I've worked with different groups, it's nice to have a diverse set of individuals who are engaged in some of these processes, because they think about things from a different lens than I do. And so having that additional input on what the long-term consequences could be to different collaborators for a process is important, because they do think about things a little bit differently than I do. And you know, working in human resources, I think about things differently than someone who is operational. And so sometimes bouncing it past different stakeholders for those different perspectives, even for the long-term consequences, can be really helpful and important. And the last piece of this is, have you determined who does what by when? So if you're going to put a proposal together for a change within your organization, defining who's going to be the owner of that, who's going to do each piece of the work in the change management for the proposal, what are the proposed deadlines for that going to be? That way, if it is something that's going to have a high impact on the work that you're doing and you'd like to see this change move forward, you can demonstrate that you really have thought through a process of who can take on each piece of it and what the timeline for the proposal would be. So hopefully some of these tools, as you think about putting proposals together, will be helpful for you. As always, if there's any of this printed materials that would be helpful for people, I'm happy to send out a PDF. My email is l.hamilton@wsu.edu. So I'm happy to share that with anybody who find it may be beneficial. Some of these formats are things that I've used over the years and have been really helpful for me, and I'm always happy to share them. And I hope you guys have a fantastic Wednesday.